Hello, welcome to Ever Chosen Minis. Today I am going to be showing you how I paint my Necrons. This has been my favorite recipe. I've painted Necrons once before, but this particularly is a little special. So in my last video I kind of talked about how you can make your army stand out. And when you make it stand out, you need something that's a little bit different, something that you don't see in other painting tutorials, whether that be contrast, like we used last video, or in this one, it is a special type of metallic paint. So this product I have used a few times, including on my original Sisters of Battle army before I got rid of it. But it's chrome paint through paint markers. So this set here came from Amazon. It is by Flyseed, and it's a pack of 3. So it's pretty important to get these in a pack of 3. There is other markers you can get, and you can even bust these open and apply the paint inside with a paintbrush if you prefer. But I like just being able to draw them on. It's actually a lot more convenient than you think. But the reason why we want these in these various sizes is just the models change a lot. There's a lot of nooks and crannies where you're not going to be able to get the really big one in. So having this variety really helps, get the paint everywhere that you want it, and it's a really unique effect. You see people kind of freehand chrome and just how reflective and shiny it is. So we're doing that for the Necrons. It is probably the perfect army to try this out on, and we're going to be just putting this everywhere. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's hop into it. I'll show you exactly how I got these painted, and just how easy this process is. Alrighty, so a few caveats before we start. This paint job is actually super simple and fast. Matter of fact, we are going to be speed painting an army in our next video just to see how much we can get done in a single day. But before we get ahead of ourselves there, all of these miniatures actually started off secondhand, and whenever you get Necron lots online, they often come like this. They're usually primed metallic and then given like a wash or something along those lines. So they're usually just kind of very simple Necrons. But that's kind of what we want. A lot of the work is already done when you do it that way. But the caveat here is that if you do not have secondhand models, you're doing this from scratch, you are going to want to just use a metallic primer. Lead Belcher from Games Workshop is the most common that you'd see used for this, and then give it like a Nuln Oil or Agrass or Shade Wash. This is going to bring everything down in the recesses a little bit. It's not too important if you miss certain parts. Some of the steps we do a little bit later on kind of cover that up in a way that's not going to be super noticeable. So to get started on this, on any Necron model, you'll see kind of like a shell. In this case, you'll see it kind of on their arms, legs. It's kind of the thicker pieces of armor, uh, and it's kind of exemplified when you see the ones where that's missing. You just kind of see like almost like a bone because they have that zombie aesthetic. So we want the metallic on all of these areas. Now, a trick for applying this metallic is that you want to start with the big one first. So the biggest you can, because the way the metallic paint works, it's actually kind of thick, and it's producing kind of like a liquid layer on top. So the bigger brush you get, the less of these like little streaky lines that you see on the surface, and the more overall reflective and metallic it'll be. So it's really easy to apply, not hard at all, but you do want to be careful not to go back over it while it's tacky and still drying. If you do that, you're actually going to ruin the metallic effect in some areas, which can be beneficial. If you mess up, it'll look kind of just like battle damage, and it'll actually help you catch some of the pigment powder that we use later. So you can be as neat as you want on this. It's not particularly hard. It's paint markers, so it's basically just kind of like a 3D coloring book, which makes it a little bit more convenient. But it just adds to the speed of this whole process. You really are just catching surfaces with the biggest marker you can, and then you go back in with some of the smaller ones to maybe reach the places that you can. And as you can see here in the video, it just starts knocking these things out. So really fast, easy way to get that on there, and then move on to our next step. All right, so now that we've taken some time, we have all the metallics layered onto our model. You will want to give them a little bit of time to dry. So probably about an hour or so will give you enough time for them to be workable again. Like I said, while it's still tacky, if you start rubbing it, you're going to lose a lot of that reflectiveness from the chrome and make a lot of texture where you might not want it. So on certain models, really just the square type board here, you're going to see me do one additional step that the other ones don't get, and that's just some gold paint on some of the trim where you would need it. Models like that, it's really easy just to give them an accent metallic, and that's just going to help them stand out, and you can give a little more detail that some of the other models don't have, like the warriors and the destroyers here. So once you get the gold trim done on some of your character models, that's really the only thing special they get. But universally, we're going to be giving everything a wash with pigment powder. Now I use Vallejo pigment powder, and you'll see here it's like a red earthy color. Now, because we just put this chrome on all of the kind of shell bits, we have a lot of that leftover normal metallic paint in between on the joints, on the spine. And this was important because the chrome is really hydrostatic. It doesn't take pigment super well. You'll see some of the Necrons have sculpted like chips in their metal, and that will catch pigment powder just fine. But in general, it's going to wick off and kind of turn into little water beads. So you can kind of wick those off whenever they start popping up. But because we have those just normal metallic paints that aren't hydrostatic in between, it's going to allow this pigment powder, after we mix water with it, to run into the recesses and stay there. So we just kind of slather this across the entire model, and this is just going to catch in all the places, and this is just going to weather it quite a bit. It's going to make it look war torn and old, and it's going to add a nice patina to everything and kind of dull down the chrome in certain areas to make it have a little more contrast with the darker kind of reddish joints versus the really reflective bright chrome that you're going to get hit in the face with. I know true metallics have kind of a issue, um, with lighting. You don't get to control where the light source comes from. It's just your environment. But chrome is really good at picking up light, so it's going to look super striking no matter what, even with this pigment powder. And if you get too much, if you don't put a lot of water and it comes on really thick, you can wick it off with a wet brush and clean up some of the like more flat areas where you want it to really reflect and shine. So really easy method here. It's going to add a lot of depth and character in just one step. You'll see it really just transform when it comes to this one. So it doesn't even take that long to dry. By the time I finished my original models, uh, were already dry, and then you can just kind of move on step to step. So this is actually a really effective batch painting method, and one that I am eager to try very soon. And I'll let you know how much you can really knock out with this. So after we get all of the pigment powder on there, you'll see it on some of these models, but I definitely learned to do this after. We're going to take a dark green and just base this over all of the pipes and where we want the glow effects to be. So this is going to be the weapons on these models, um, some of the orbs and tubes that we see, and the eyes. So this is going to give us a nice deep base coat. It's going to help us map out where we want all of our highlights to be. And then from here, it's really easy. I've done this in two different methods, and honestly, it looks really good either way. If you have an airbrush, you're going to want to airbrush on this white coat over the glowing areas. And if you don't, just a heavy-handed brush, kind of dry brushing it over the bulbs and the areas around it is going to just give you a little bit of white to work with. And we're going to be doing two different colorings on this to help make the glowing effect. So no matter what method that you end up using, whether you have an airbrush or not, it's still going to look just fine. So after you get the white plenty of time to dry, sometimes it's recommended here that you go back over it. White is usually really translucent whenever you put it on, so you don't always get the brightest that it can be without several layers. So just take your time and build up that light, because the brighter you make it, the more you're going to sell this glowing effect. And that's kind of what I did here. Now, the next two steps are going to be super easy. We are just going to be using a green ink to tint the white. So I just put this kind of very lightly in a thin layer over the white. And you can do this in one and two passes as well, depending on how deep you want that green. But you'll see here immediately just how it transforms the white into a glowing green pool. Now, typically you want the light source to be a bit brighter in the middle, and I achieve this with one more technique. I use a AK yellow fluorescent paint. And I just put that in the very center. That's going to add just a twinge more color, and you'll see that it goes from just a glowing green to a really vibrant glow that you see on all the Necron art. This is my recipe that I found that gets us closest to that green glow that they have on everything, and I think it looks really good. Uh, Now, I covered how to do Mars bases before, which is what you'll see these beauty shots on. Um, and they're super, super easy. I think that the red bases work really well for the Necrons just because of their lore, and obviously red and green are complementary colors. So whenever you can sneak that in on these bases, it does make them pop quite a bit. All right, thank you very much for making it to the end of the video here. I had a lot of fun painting these Necrons. I'm really happy with just how fast this technique is and how good it looks. It doesn't require a lot of technical skill either. Um, Whenever I was trying to come up with this paint scheme, I wanted to incorporate the chrome because I knew how much of an easy and awesome tool it was. And so I hope this kind of gets you inspired. If you are sitting on a bunch of Necrons that aren't done, or you don't know how you want your Necrons, but you're like, oh, I just want to finish this army super fast, but I want it to look good. This is a really cheap way to do it. The paints aren't expensive. You could probably get everything you need to do these for $50 or less. Um, and then you'll just be able to make this exact same recipe, and it comes together super fast. So again, appreciate you making it to the end of the video. I hope you liked it. Like I said, on Monday, we're going to be starting the process of a big army painting challenge to see how many of these Necrons we can do in this style in just one day, and then I'll make a video on it, and you can just see, how far you can stretch this paint job and how much you can get done with it. So you guys have a great rest of your day, and I appreciate you hanging with me. Have a good one.